Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the #1 source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
This is our thrice annual warning to the listeners of this is a post-Winged Wheel podcast night episode, and so we're doing our best. Evan's body is making 17 different unique and constant noises. I think I just saw Brad's last bit of soul leave his body through his eyeballs, which is a new one. So we're going to do our best today.
I smoked 0 cigarettes last night, and I've never smoked one in my life. But it sounds like I've been a chronic smoker for all 34 years.
If you thought Evan looked out to lunch, like his physical appearance looked like he was just a robot that hadn't been turned on, today is going to be a whole new level of that.
Oh, yeah.
Every word you speak is a purple hard effort from you.
Absolutely.
So last night was Winged Wheel Podcast night at the LCA. We'll get into the Red Wings part of it momentarily here, but the whole event, incredible. Best turnout we've had. I think our best, or one of our best live shows. We had Sam Rosen on. It was amazing. You know, by the end of the game, people were like, man, Winged Wheel Podcast nights, do they ever win? And I looked into it. We are actually perfectly 500 on Winged Wheel Podcast nights. We're 3-3-1. And last night's loss is included. So they were above 500 there for a second when we were in the building. Do you know the Red Wings' cumulative record from the season where we started Winged Wheel Podcast nights through today? So that's from the 2021-2022 season. They are 114 wins, 116 losses, and 30 overtime or shootout losses for a 0.496 points percentage. And on Winged Wheel Podcast nights, they have a perfect 500 points percentage. So over the course of a season, if you round up and down appropriately, the Red Wings play up until this point to an 81-point pace. And with us in the building, it's an 82-point pace. So you can say we are worth one standings point is the most generous way.
That would have been all the difference last year.
That's depressing, Evan. I didn't even think about it.
You want to talk about depressing? Talk about the last time they scored at a Winged Wheel Podcast event.
Well, it wasn't in our calendar year 2024. It was nearly 130 minutes of playtime ago. It was Andrew Kopp on November 4th, 2023 against the Boston Bruins. And that wasn't even the last goal of that game. Boston scored after that. So there have been, 9 goals unanswered from the opponents? Let's do better in 2025, please.
If anybody ever asks why we're so negative on the Red Wings, this is our direct sample.
I don't even think we are. I think it could get, well, I mean,
we know it can.
You, Brad, got very firsthand on how negative it can get on the Red Wings. And it wasn't even coming from you. Okay, folks, we're going to jump right into it. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking to you about the 2 Detroit Red Wings games that have happened since the last time we spoke. The away game, the Hall of Fame game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and last night, Winged Wheel Podcast night at the LCA in partnership with the Detroit Red Wings, the game against the New York Rangers at home. We are going to be covering takeaways from that game, the ups, the many downs, and then an overall discussion on the team, which seems to be a standing topic at this point in the Red Wings season, for better or for worse, the PK, all of that. We're going to get into some stats that are, meant to instill some positivity. Lucas Raymond, Dmitri Buchelnikov, etc. We will make some notes about Pavel Datsyuk's Hockey Hall of Fame weekend before we jump into NHL news, including the big deal with the NCAA and the CHL that we've been talking about for some time. The brief moment of hope with Dante Fabbro, the Jets lighting it up, Daniel Sprong on the move again, and lots more. Before all that, I want to make a couple quick notes. First, Hot Stove Stories Rounding the Bases with Mike Tirico and guests in benefit of the Jamie Daniels Foundation is on Tuesday, January 14th. Go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org to find out more about this fantastic event, which will include guests like Jason Benetti, Dan Dickerson, Len Casper, and more. It is a fantastic event. Get your tickets today. They are already, I think, more than halfway sold. So if you're interested in sponsoring, go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org. Tickets are available and they are going fast. Secondly, if you want to support the show and allow us to continue to do things like Winged Wheel Podcast Nights in partnership with the Detroit Red Wings and the Grand Rapids Griffins, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast is how you do so. You also get benefits like access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. You're automatically entered into all of our giveaways, which include 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game. Additionally, you get access to all of our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. Speaking of Winged Wheel Podcast Night, I'm wearing our jersey giveaway from this game. So we've done hat giveaways for almost all of our podcast nights. This is a Red Wings jersey with the Winged Wheel Podcast logo on the shoulders, which is
very cool.
The fact that we've known about it for so long, like it stopped us from really appreciating. That is the coolest thing we've done so far, right? Well, so far. Stay tuned. But big shout out to the Detroit Red Wings. That was a very, very fun giveaway. It's surreal for us, and we hope you all like your jerseys. If you got tickets to the event but didn't get your jersey for one reason or another, shoot us an email and we'll help take care of that. Okay, the Detroit Red Wings on the Hall of Fame game in Toronto on Friday were facing an Austin Matthews-less Toronto Maple Leafs. And before we talk about the end result of the game, one quick spoiler, they outshot the Leafs 22-20. 22-20, the Red Wings outshot the Leafs.
And they won the game, right?
Shut up, Evan.
No problem.
The Red Wings lost the game 3-1, and it was 2-1 until an empty net goal, which happened in the most Red Wings tragic way possible. We'll get to that in a minute. But overall takeaways on this game, how this all went down, the Dylan Larkin goal, and everything else. What are your thoughts?
My immediate takeaways from that game were this felt like more of the same. From a positive standpoint, at least as positive as it can be, given how the Red Wings have been playing this year. Team defense was fairly solid that game, especially at 5-on-5, as both non-empty net goals came on the Leafs power play. I'll get to the penalty kill in a minute. But at 5-on-5, they did a fairly good job of neutralizing them, which is positive. Felt like the Red Wings generated nothing offensively again, which, depending what analytic you look at, I saw one today, expected goals for percentage in the NHL. Dead last, just for context. And, when you're playing a higher powered team like the Leafs, there is a moral victory in turning it into that kind of a slog, because you're not going to run and gun and beat the Leafs. We all know that. Everybody knows that. Makes for boring hockey, but in some cases it's a necessity. There is a limit to that, though. They had the one power play goal and didn't even feel like they got close to scoring a goal at 5-on-5. And I don't know if you guys know this rule in the NHL. If you don't score more goals than the other team, you don't win. So it's
Brad, I read out the Red Wings record for the past 3 and a bit seasons. We know.
And they're still struggling to score goals. So tough watch. Some moral victories to be taken away. And the penalty kill, oh my God, just atrocious.
I thought what you said was really apt. Like, you tweeted this out and you said for everything that the Detroit Red Wings power play gains or gives the team, they give it all away on the penalty kill. And that was evidenced by the second period where Detroit was down 1-0 and Dylan Larkin had a great turnaround shot for his 9th goal of the season. That I think made it a 4-game goal streak for him. It was his NHL leading 6th power play goal. It was, a great moment. And you're like, okay, wow, the Red Wings are doing something in this slog of a game where, as you said correctly, Brad, that's your strategy against a team like the Leafs. And then they immediately turn around and give it away not even 2 minutes later on the penalty kill to John Tavares. Like, it was automatic. And that's becoming a problem for the Red Wings, especially if you're not scoring 5-on-5 and you have the good fortune of having decent goaltending and a power play that's clicking. You can't be giving it away on the penalty kill, and that's what they're doing right now. It is extremely bad.
And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going wrong on the PK because it feels like it's all going wrong. And it feels like a lot of these power play goals they're giving up are like 10 seconds into the power play. Purely anecdotally speaking, I don't actually have any stats to back it up. I know the one Rangers one last night was immediate. Man, it's just almost impossible to describe how lifeless the PK looks. It truly feels like you're waiting for the inevitable.
If you can change one thing about the Red Wings right now, like I understand there's a lot of calls for change at different levels, players, coaches, whatever. The PK has to change. Like there needs to be something done on the PK. Whatever is happening right now isn't working. And I don't really buy into the whole they don't have the personnel to do it. I think the PK, it's not like you take all of your bottom six, bottom pair players and you put them in, and just because they're not offensive dynamos, they're PK specialists. I think a lot of the modern NHL, you're seeing more and more of your best players play all situations kind of thing, or maybe at least in certain cases. But still, the Red Wings have the personnel to have a good PK. There's not really an excuse to be this bad. And if you can pick one thing in the modern NHL where you can scheme your way to being good, it's penalty killing. You know, you can't scheme high-end goal scoring. You can't scheme high-end goaltending, but you can scheme a good PK, and it's just not working for Detroit. And it's tanking them. Like we've talked about this season, it's not been a fun watch for a lot of it. Even when they're winning games, it's a little bit of a grind, or the goalie's bailing them out, or maybe one or two players are bailing them out. And so when you're already in that situation, you can't have your special teams letting you down like that, automatically.
And it's funny because, I guess not funny, but it's perplexing because they're not all that terrible at 5-on-5 team defense. Like, yeah, there's systematic problems on the back end, but if you've got Edvinsson and Seider playing 25 plus minutes a game, they don't look all that bad. But as soon as the penalty kill trots out there, it's just the wheels fall off immediately.
Yeah, it's a really good point because, for all of the lack of team defense to start the season, that's actually something that has kind of grown into shape where they are able to stifle the team. We're going to talk about the Rangers game as well, but against Toronto and the Rangers, two high-powered teams, even if Toronto was missing Matthews, they did a good job of gumming it up and playing boring team defense, the kind of game that drives you insane to watch. But again, like Brad said, that has to be your strategy. But yeah, it's just another deficiency that this team has to work through right now, and frankly, they're fortunate it's not more. Very quickly, I want to talk about that Larkin goal. It's extremely funny that we came and said, hey, Larkin's still doing great because he's one of, if not the Red Wings' best player, but he still looks a little off, and then immediately turned around and is doing this. Love to see Dylan Larkin's Nana in the crowd cheering. And I almost forgot the ongoing thing where she pays him for every goal. So between Joseph, one of our good friends and podcast supporters, committing to a Harambe tattoo if he hits 40 goals, and Dylan Larkin's Nana having to pay him for every goal, there's going to be some expensive end of season, catch-ups going on here. We can't talk about this game without talking about the giveaway that led to the John Tavares goal, empty net goal in the third.
Oh, the good old-fashioned Detroit deep dish drop pass, bringing that one back from the dead.
I wanted to. I actually forgot we used to do that bit. I never want to hear that again. The deep dish, but that was on the power play entry, right? Like that's what we used to say about. Same
concept, yeah. Because it was so bad, there was a meme floating around for it.
Back in the day, we used to talk about how the Red Wings could not enter the zone, especially on the power play, and they used to try the deepest drop pass in the neutral zone possible, and it was comical how many times it just didn't work, or it got intercepted, or the players were never moving in sequence. This was like Blashill, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And Mo Seider breaking out of the zone on a empty net pull. The puck came back to him. He's going to break out. He has trailers behind him. The goalie's being pulled early in the process. Like they're not really broken out of the zone yet before Talbot starts to go. And Seider, Brad and I actually argued for quite some time on whether Seider meant to do this like double tap and leave it in place. Brad, you think it was a whiff on a drop pass? Regardless, Seider messed it up. Whether you think he was trying to get it to DeBrincat or Kane or maybe Larkin streaking back to circle, whatever it was just a brain fart, and Tavares came in and scored, and that is just the most Red Wings way to lose that game. I mean, they were already losing, I get it, but still, like that, with a minute 30 left, your goalie left before you were even out of the zone, you were just like, if the season was going better, you could almost laugh at that, but that one, it's hard to find even the delirious hilarity in.
Until the next night when they pulled the goalie again and looked off 2 grade A shots to make passes. Neither of them ended up in the net. And then the second the New York Rangers touched the puck, it ended up in the empty net at the other end of the ice. But yeah, I'm sensing a theme.
So what do you think Seider did there?
I think he was trying to, it looked like Kane was looping around and coming up directly behind him. I think Seider was trying to drop it to him and then whiffed, went over top of the puck and then ended up double hitting it, which just kind of stopped it, left it in place for Tavares to come in and pick up.
In any case, it was a unforced error of Aaron Judge proportions. Thankfully, not the same setting, although I would love for it to have been in that at least important of a game. The Red Wings dropped that one 3-1. And look, we talked last episode. Tough weekend to walk into, right? Like you have a back-to-back with travel. I get Toronto to Detroit's not the worst. It's probably the easiest travel or among the easiest travel in the league. But still, those are juggernaut teams in terms of offense. So 3-1 is the loss, and Detroit walks away without a point. You think maybe they missed a trick there with no Matthews. Like, that's your opportunity to steal a point from an unlikely opponent to take a point off of, especially when you're going to play on a back-to-back against the Rangers, who have beat you by a good margin twice already this season. Why are we playing the Rangers 3 times before Thanksgiving? Look, what? So stupid.
Red Wings haven't even played every team in their division yet.
I don't think they've played half the teams in their division yet. No Ottawa, no Boston.
Montreal?
No Montreal, no Tampa, no Florida.
Yeah, you're right. Wow.
Thanks, NHL schedule makers. Really appreciate that. Big help so far.
And if you want to get more depressed about the schedule, I happened to be looking at Detroit's April schedule yesterday.
Brad, let's just get to April, man.
My guy, if they are in a playoff race in that month, oh no.
I'm more concerned about December, the usual December slump.
They need to be, and looking at the April schedule, for me to say confidently they'll make the playoffs, they need to be 10 points clear of 9th place going into April.
I thought you were about to mute Brad. You should have.
I've been searching for a way to do it in real life.
Please, you'd be doing me a favor.
We're going to after we cover these games, I'm going to talk about the whole, tone, bleak. Like, I get the season so far, especially the podcasts have been. A lot of people are like, feels like depressing. Like, it feels like it's so negative. We'll address that. Let's just get through the Rangers game first. The Red Wings lost 4-0 to the Rangers, and I had 2 people separately from each other come up to me at different points in the post-game after party of a Winged Wheel podcast night. The first person said, that was hard to watch. And I went, yeah, correct. The next person, 5 minutes later, came in and said, that was probably Detroit's best game of the season. And I said, yeah, correct. And that's where we are.
It can be both for sure.
Detroit came in and had the effort they needed to against the Rangers by and large. They had Ville Husso in net because Alex Lyon tweaked something, lower body in practice, so they called up Ville Husso. And, for long stretches of the game, they were dominating. They were getting opportunities. They were taking the shots. They were not taking the shots, as you said, Brad, looking off key opportunities. But still, they were controlling the game for the most part. And the Rangers, up 1-0 after the first period, which was frustrating. It was a Kreider tip-in goal on the power play, and you're like, you don't really blame Ville Husso, whatever. That's the penalty kill being as bad as it is. And then in the second period near the end, Jimmy Vesey and Artemi Panarin go back-to-back, and that was just
That was it.
That was a backbreaker because the Red Wings, to that point, you were like, they're controlling play. They just need one to go in. And we saw shades of 2012 Jonathan Quick, but I also think the Red Wings were making Jonathan Quick look really good that game. He had that unreal save on Berggren, which of all Red Wings who deserve that, he's at the bottom of the list. But that's this is what I'm saying. We don't try to be negative, but this many games into the season, when you have that good of an effort and you walk away with a 4-goal deficit shutout like that, you understand why fans boo. You understand why fans are frustrated and discontent. And, whether people say you're being too positive or too negative, everyone's just, there's so much anxiety and angst around this team because that, I think Newsy said that was one of the most frustrating games he's ever seen in his life. And you felt it in the arena.
Yeah, being right behind one of the nets. I had perfect angle on 2 separate Red Wings missing wide open nets. And I don't mean Quick was down and the whole top half was up. Wide open nets.
Seider's miss to the left side.
That was the
that
worst
one hurt.
of them.
That one hurt.
Man,
sure.
I had the exact worst angle on it because I saw it in a straight line the whole way. Painful because, yeah, like you said with those 2 comments, that was, without a doubt, beyond question, the best the Red Wings have played all year. They were hemming the Rangers in their zone for very long stretches. And while they were in there, generating a lot of high danger scoring chances. It's what we've been begging them to do all season. And at no point in the season have they been able to do this. And now they're doing it to the New York freaking Rangers. Like, it was phenomenal to see. Their puck retrievals, excellent. Their ozone cycle, excellent. They were getting bodies to the net. They were getting the puck to the slot. Like, their transition was good. Like, this was the best game Erik Gustafsson had as a Red Wing. Like, he was moving the puck very well. It was the first time all year I go, I see it. I see why they signed this guy. It's a problem we're saying this in the 14th game of the season, but
take it.
But there it was. And it all came down to hit the damn net. Like, what was the one stat Pershaw threw out mid-game? The Red Wings had like something like 2.4 expected goals. And 1.6 of those, they missed the net. Like, hockey sometimes is a very complicated, nuanced game where this breakdown happened here, which led to this player going out of position, which led to this guy getting the puck in the wrong spot and scoring. This came down to, if they had hit their spots, they win that game by a lot.
Yeah, you're happy they had the opportunities. And if the Red Wings keep playing like this for the rest of, let's say, just the calendar year, I think we're going into 2025 pretty happy in terms of results, because you're not playing the Rangers every game. You're not playing a goalie who's doing relatively really well every game. The Red Wings will probably find themselves in that wild card race just based on personnel and effort. But, it hasn't happened all season. And so this is why there's so much angst in the Red Wings fan base of like, okay, this was one of the few times we've seen this so far. And when they were out shooting the Rangers 2-1, like I think the shots were 30-15 or 24-12. That's when the Rangers scored 2 quick ones to make it 2-3-0 at the end of the second. So you're like, is this going to happen again? Or did they just waste an opportunity?
The Red Wings had 19 shots in the second period. It was incredible to witness. But man, did this game ever feel like the universe was just balancing itself back out? Felt like the Red Wings were, I don't think deserved is the right word, but they were due for a game where what they've been doing to teams when they win happens to them.
Yeah, like if the offense converted on even one opportunity in the second period, I think that changes the whole tone of the game. It's a positive takeaway. Like what they were able to do against the Rangers is a positive takeaway. They did that on a back-to-back with travel. That's a good thing. But this far into the season, I don't fault any fan who's like, well, the results are still a 4-0 loss. So why am I supposed to be positive about that? Now, it wasn't Cam Talbot or Alex Line in net. It was Ville Husso, who's been fighting injury for, more than a calendar year now. And I think like some of the goals were, a quick puck out in front that was just banged in on a guy that was uncovered in Jimmy Vesey. Like you can't fault him for that. A tip in front, you can't fault him for that. I think the Panarin goal was that one hurt. And that was just being rusty and not dialed in. But, like you don't have Talbot or Line bailing you out and your offense isn't scoring on the opportunities they have. This is going to happen against good teams. I said something in the Leafs game where I said the Talbot acquisition, probably in terms of like net points in the standings, is one of Yzerman's most, impactful decisions, replacing Reimer with Talbot. And my mistake was not being more forthright, which is that was a slight. Like that, it's not a celebration. I think Talbot's been really good, but he's not going to win the Vezina or anything. And it's that like this team would be so much worse if they didn't have 2 capable goalies in net for these first, dozen plus games. Because if it was Reimer, for example, except for the odd game where he'd randomly be unreal, this team would be way lower in the standings right now. If it was...
Well, they would have won Friday night because they played the Leafs.
That's right, yeah.
Reimer would have pitched a shutout.
Maybe they should have brought him back just for that. And at this point in the season, like, you know, Lyon was just kind of coming into play. They still had Husso, who was doing terrible last year. They're fortunate to still be this close to 500 in my mind, as we've talked about. And Talbot has been a hell of an acquisition on that front.
They have a top 10 goalie in goals saved above expected and a bottom 10 goalie in goals saved above expected. So,
and that's a cumulative stat, and Ville Husso has played 2 games. Sorry, not even 2 full games.
So, yeah, that's a stat for sure. Yeah, I get the want to pin that one on Husso a little bit, but outside of the Panarin goal, I can't bring myself to fault him for the other 2.
No, it was like there was moments where I think the game would have been shifted had they done anything a little bit more dialed in terms of converting on their offensive opportunities. As you said, Brad, like, you can always say, oh, this guy should score more, or that guy should have scored on that opportunity. Like, these were legitimate misses wide of the net, sometimes with a wide open cage, and that's tough to watch.
And it's not like the Rangers came out into the second period and took the game away. Jimmy Vesey didn't score till 3 minutes left in the second period. They had all period to right the wrongs and change the momentum, and then the Rangers went back-to-back with 2 goals, and it kind of felt like it was it.
It's really hard right now to walk this line with the Red Wings where you're like, yeah, you have to, if you could click a button and duplicate that effort every single game, is there a single Red Wings fan in the world who wouldn't hammer that button for the rest of the Red Wings season? I don't mean like you guarantee you miss a net. I mean, just like in terms of how much of the game they controlled, how much they outshot the opponent by. Even in the end, the Red Wings outshot them, what was it, 37-24. And they were outshooting them even more heavily before that. Like, just in terms of how well the Red Wings played against a better team, you take that every time.
1,000%, but this was, Evan already alluded to it, probably just karma coming back to bite us in the ass. Because again, if you're looking at the deserve to win meter, the Red Wings probably only have 2 wins this year, maybe 3. Like, an undeserved loss was due after all the undeserved wins.
There's a larger discussion that we're going to have on like the tone of this season and how the team has been progressing. We're going to first take a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. There is nothing that compares to watching hockey live. It's not just about being closer to the action. It's hearing the sounds of the game, feeling the big hits along the boards. I personally will never forget how electric it was to be in the crowd for the last playoff win at the Joe. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to games or whatever concert or show you want to go to even easier. I went on the Game Time app to check out tickets for the Flyers at Red Wings game at the LCA on December 18th, and the tickets that really caught my eye were in their Super Deal category, $108 for lower bowl, 8 rows up from the ice. They also had deals in their Amazing Deal category like mezzanine seats from $60, and in their Great Deal category including upper bowl seats from just $22. Buying tickets on Game Time is by far the easiest, best experience I've had buying hockey or concert tickets. My personal favorite feature is the integrated seat views, giving you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. I'm huge on trying out new spots around the arena and getting the most ideal seats possible for shows, so I use Game Time seat views constantly. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code WINGEDWHEEL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code WINGEDWHEEL Winged Wheel for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for Detroit, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer, and it's great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. Welcome back. So the Red Wings at this point, like last episode, they were technically in a playoff spot. Right now, they are 6-7-1 through 14 games, 13 points, and they are now 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth team out of a wild card spot. It's all very tight. Like the Tampa Bay Lightning are 15 points in 14 games. They hold that second spot, and down to second last in the conference is 12 points. It's tight margins. In a week, we could be having a whole different conversation. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, by some early November benchmark, Detroit's out of it or whatnot. Just an overall tone of this season for Red Wings fans. And we've been kind of talking about this piece by piece since the season started. Like one of the biggest things we do is keep a pulse on what the fan base is feeling. And we get a lot of that feedback at us because, this is we build a community and we want to have these discussions with listeners and we hear the feedback coming in on people saying you're too negative on the team right now and it's kind of like spiraling, or you're too positive and the moral victories are worthless in standings points. And I see the merit to both arguments. And right now it's this catch-22 of you can see all the things leading Detroit to be at best a mushy middle team, right? Like we're not going to sit here and pick out all the players who are failing on defense. Like we know there's very little to speak of on defense behind Seider and Edvinsson. We know the depth scoring isn't there this year, and that is by and large a roster construction thing. And so that's that until something changes. They didn't pick up Dante Fabbro. They haven't made a trade. They traded Mata away, but he wasn't even the biggest problem on defense, not even close. So until Yzerman changes that's going to be the case. It's the execution things. It's when the Red Wings are winning games. It's how it happens. Like fans are expressing their discontent because it's just kind of a grind and a slog. The like you said, Brad, the 5-on-5 expected scoring is league worst or among the league worst. The most generous way you can say that. I understand why there is like the angst and the discontent from the fan base, and as long as they are struggling to get results the way they are, or when they do win, it's this kind of weird, they happen to win kind of games that you feel they don't necessarily deserve or didn't outplay the opponent. This is how the fan base is going to feel. Like, it's a different feel than last season, even if the results don't feel different.
From the actual analysis side, Red Wings fans aren't dumb. They know a 6-7-1 record is not good. And then when you look at that 6-7-1 record and go, they're lucky to even have that much, it's hard to swallow because this team could, again, deserve to win a meter is like a BS fun thing that everybody does. But there is some truth behind it in terms of game outcome.
Take larger trends, not individual games.
Exactly. But according to that, the Red Wings should have 2 or 3 wins this year. They have 6. So 2 or 3 wins to this point in the season, they're a lottery team. We're not talking about the mushy middle. We're talking about one of the worst teams in the league. And hockey's random, as we just saw yesterday. It doesn't always bounce a certain way just because it should. You get lucky, you get unlucky. Last year, the Red Wings got more lucky than they got unlucky, and they almost made the playoffs. This year, it feels kind of like the same trend. So, again, the optimistic view that we've talked about before, if they can get to 6 wins playing like they have, if they right some of these wrongs, well, you still bank those points. But even saying that, I can feel like I'm grasping at straws that aren't really there. And the fan base is probably doing the same thing. From a Erie voodoo standpoint as a fan, remember what happened last year after the Red Wings had a big win in Chicago and were sitting in a wild card spot and the Winged Wheel podcast got a little too optimistic?
I don't remember that.
Well, you're going on vacation pretty soon, Evan, so
anything could happen.
Whatever happens that's bad from that point on is your fault. And Brad and I
100%.
take no responsibility for anything we say.
You don't anyway.
Just saying, since that Chicago win, 2 straight losses.
You're like last year proved to you that an unlikely team can come out and do this. It's not the same makeup. You can point to actual tangible differences in the offense that is leading at least somewhat to a lesser offense, and that's both from the offensive players and Shane Gostisbehere. And you can point to tangible differences on the defense that is making the defense somehow even worse. The goaltending is propping them up. The power play is propping them up. So yeah, you're right, Brad. This fan base is smart and they understand. Even if you change the coach, great, you might get a new coach bump, but for how long? Because the roster is still the same. The best version of this team that you're going to get is a potential unlikely wild card contender based on the roster that you have now. And again, that's based on the fortunate results they've had to date, as much as it doesn't feel fortunate, and the fact that we know we have proof of how things can go your way in the NHL, even if you're not one of the better teams. And I don't blame anyone for being frustrated with that. And I understand when people are like, how are you frustrated by still being in the wild card mix? Like, you're not a league worst, sub 10-point team right now. But yeah, I think you put it well. The Red Wings fan base is smart. They know what a good team looks like. And this is a team that still has warts. The best possible outcome after these two tough games is, they play Pittsburgh on Wednesday, a team that has their own struggles. Yes, they're going to be on the road, the Red Wings, but Pittsburgh has their own struggles. And then they have Anaheim, LA back-to-back, and then San Jose on their West Coast road trip. 4 straight road games is not easy, but those are teams that you should be in the mix against. That West Coast road trip, by and large, should be, the Red Wings should be in play there. LA, I get it. They're near top of the league, so that's different. They're at the top of the Pacific Division. But if they can replicate efforts like they had against the Rangers at least a few times, then you can start to draw on more of those moral victories and the positives. But by and large now, the trends that are there, like the alarm bells are happening this season and not last season for a reason. And the fan base is not dumb.
No, and if you fancy yourself a playoff team, when you get a run of bottom feeders like the Penguins, Sharks, and Ducks, I know the Kings are mixed in there, you have to capitalize, especially coming off of 2 tough losses, one of which you could maybe even argue both you should have won. And in my mind, the absolute bare minimum out of this 4-game road trip is a 2-1-1. That's the bare ass minimum. Anything worse than that is a failure, given how San Jose, Anaheim, and Pittsburgh are doing this year. We all, I'm not a guy who looks at the schedule and goes, that's an excuse or that's the reason. But they did have a tough start. They've got
the Rangers 3 times again is so stupid.
Yeah, they've got a nice stretch here where schedule's not an issue. And it only gets worse again after that. Got to capitalize. And again, because the fan base isn't dumb. If you lose to Anaheim, I don't care what the circumstances are that led to the loss. You shouldn't lose to Anaheim. So
Meteor hits the ice to flex the puck in. Sorry, Brad. You said there's no excuse.
Should have seen it coming.
If the actual positive to this is and I think you did a good job on talking about this, at least somewhat on dropping the gloves. Everything that's happening this season is contained within this season and next, however pessimistic you want to be. The core makeup of what actually matters for the window, and this is more of an off-season style conversation where we talk about the window a lot. Seider, Raymond, Larkin, etc., Sandin Pellikka, Edvinsson, MBN. Nothing that has happened that's been bad for the Red Wings so far has affected that in a negative way. So that's, if you want to find a glimmer of hope, you have to look to the future. But I just don't know how much patience Red Wings fans have for yet another season of this. And I've said before, I think on the show and off air plenty, it is a different makeup in Detroit when you have the other teams. Like the Lions right now, there's a reason you hear the Jared Goff chants. And sometimes it's like a Bronx cheer, but it's because the Lions are the team that's giving Detroit hope and excitement right now. And the Red Wings aren't, and you're going to lose attention and you're going to lose care and passion until you kind of get things back on track, because Detroiters are loyal to their teams. Of course, that doesn't change, but all of that energy is going to be changed to the Lions. And it's not like only one team can have that focus at a time, but they're certainly not going to enjoy, watching this Red Wings team compared to what the Lions are doing.
Well, people only have a finite amount of free time and free money to put towards entertainment. And if one is far more entertaining than the other, then they're going to do that instead. It's just the fact of capitalism.
The summary statement of all this is The pessimistic view is that this weekend was more of the same, even better of the same, and it was still 2 regulation losses. The optimistic view is these 2 games were against tough teams on a tough schedule, on a back-to-back with travel, and except for a few gaffes here and there, the effort overall was better, and you hope that starts to translate into results. So it's up to the Red Wings for the rest of November to see what happens. We'll see where we're at, Thanksgiving, Black Friday. They'll have to have hoped something has changed. Otherwise, I think the tone in terms of what the team expects for the season will have shifted by then, or maybe you see a major change. Okay, some positivity here. This was from, I should have said this last episode, but Lucas Raymond. Only 2 Red Wings players over the past 25 years have posted as many points as Lucas Raymond through their first 250 games. Lucas Raymond, through his first 250 games, 72 goals, 114 assists for 186 points. Those 2 players are Pavel Datsyuk, who's going to be officially inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame on Monday. The whole celebration started this weekend. He had 199 points, 69 goals.
Nice.
130 assists for 199. And Henrik Zetterberg with 88 goals, 104 assists for 192 points.
Pretty good company.
Pretty good company. Raymond's not even scoring yet this year. Not bad. Going over to the prospect side, credit to Let's Go Red Wings prospects on Twitter. They pointed this out. Dmitri Buchelnikov is on a 61-point pace right now in the KHL as of November 8th. He just turned 21. The U22 record is 55 points set by Nikishin. So I know it's really hard to appreciate Buchelnikov like day in and day out because he's not playing in North America. He's not playing in the SHL and the KHL and Russia and everything. There's a little bit of a curtain in the way. Yes, intentional. But that is a promising prospect who we haven't really talked about that much in terms of this guy could factor in. A lot has to still happen. He's an undersized forward, et cetera, but he's a very skilled one. And to produce in the KHL is not an easy thing. Like, that is a league of grown men where scoring does not come easy.
Remember the first few Yzerman drafts? What was the one thing we were banging the table for them to start doing?
Swing for the fences on talent.
Kind of nice when it looks like it might work out.
Hope for the future.
Hey, the KHL's no joke of a league. Bigger ice, different circumstances. I understand it. By no means, absolutely no means, is this a guarantee that Buchelnikov will ever even be a regular NHL player. There are a number of cases of guys who put up huge numbers in the K, came over and just couldn't hack it in the NHL. But a lot of them do. And given his age, and more importantly, for me, what his talents are as a hockey player relative to what the Red Wings, I'll just say, couldn't do last night.
You hear that one a lot?
It makes me very optimistic that, hey, this dude might end up actually being an actual stud in the NHL. Still an uphill battle before everybody thinks I'm proclaiming this guy the next Kirill Kaprizov. But if this guy can come over and be a 25-25 guy for the Wings someday, it's a grand slam for a second-round pick.
Yeah, if he even makes it over, in my mind, that is a massive success. Okay, let's jump into NHL news here. And actually, we're going to go into the pathway to the NHL, which is the long-spoken-about NCAA-CHL kind of litigation and then agreement because the litigation was going to go in a certain direction. Officially announced, the NCAA D1 Council has voted to allow Canadian Hockey League players to be eligible for D1 college hockey beginning next season. Those players, even after enrollment, can now also attend NHL training camps provided they don't receive compensation more than expenses, and B, they can't play in any outside scrimmages or exhibition games. So academically might be difficult, but the teams can now invite NCAA players to camp, but more importantly, CHL players can go to the NCAA. And not long after this, there was a lot of posturing, especially coming from the WHL, where the way they phrased it was, hey, we're really happy for this change where once players have graduated from the WHL, they can have more options, which is to say, we are going to fight the concept of any players leaving the CHL early. And now there's talk of, well, if the CHL is losing these players, then the QMJHL, the OHL, the WHL, they're going to make more efforts to bring in American markets, either through expansion or the USHL, who is probably going to get screwed by this. Like, this is going to be a colossal shakeup in the hockey pipeline. And the summary of what we have said about this overall is that this is a good thing for hockey because you have more options for good talent and you no longer pigeonhole guys to stay in certain situations, and players who need a different environment, maybe the heavier hitting or heavier physicality, more grown-up game of the college hockey world or the CHL to foster their talents. They have those options, but it's going to be a circus for a while.
It absolutely is going to be a circus. That's a great way of putting it, because there's things that haven't even been worked out yet. The draft, players' rights. If you're drafted out of the CHL, your NHL organization has 2 years to sign you to an ELC, or they lose your rights. If you're drafted out of the US, the NCAA, 4 years until the teams lose your rights. So if a player's drafted out of the CHL, say he plays for Kitchener this season, gets drafted, they want him to go to Michigan, he goes to Michigan, is that 2 or 4 years, right? He was drafted as a CHL player, but now he's playing in the NCAA. So that kind of stuff has to be ironed out. One of the fascinating details that I'm curious to see what's going to happen is obviously around the CHL and recruiting, because for those who don't know, the CHL incentive for the players is for every season you play in the CHL, can even be only one game, they offer you 1 year worth of post-secondary scholarship that they will pay for you. So if you play 1 year in the OHL, you can get 1 year of schooling when you're done in the OHL. As it stands now, that can be used. I forget the exact dollar amount. It can be used towards the NCAA, which now creates a problem for the CHL because now they're incentivizing their own players to leave.
Yeah.
So there's talk, are they going to switch that to it will only apply to Canadian schools? It's going to be fascinating. And the absolute shotgun start once this news broke, there was a player who was playing junior A, so a level below the OHL in Ontario, because he wanted to go to the NCAA. The agreement gets put through. He signs with Owen Sound the next day. It's like, well, now I can go play in the OHL for the next 2 years. Jackson Parsons, the Kitchener Rangers goaltender, within a day of this announcement, he's an overager, announces his commitment to Clarkson University. Like, these teams are going to be recruiting hard and heavy from both fronts, because now all the junior guys that are trying to hold NCAA availability can go to the CHL, starting to see them trickle in. And all the post-OHL, CHL, NCAA commitments, it's going to be insane. Because Owen Power, Macklin Celibrini, why did they play for the Chicago Steel? Because they wanted to go to the NCAA. Would they have played in the OHL instead, given opportunity back then? Probably. So we're already starting to see the effects of the junior A and B leagues in Canada getting hurt, U Sports getting hurt, the USHL getting hurt. There, like you alluded to, there's already talks. Muskegon and one other team in the USHL already reached out about possibly merging into the CHL because they know that's where the talent's likely going to end up now. So it is so many moving parts, and it's going to be extremely fascinating to see how this shifts the entire hockey landscape.
And for those who don't know, like, NCAA D1 hockey is excellent hockey, and it has been for some time. That's not a secret. U Sports, so the university, the equivalent in Canada, especially Ontario, very good hockey. It does not touch the NCAA D1 cycle.
No, because you got players up to 24, 25 years old there. Like,
guys who have given up on their dream, they go and they're like, this is the most competitive hockey I'll play. And they do. And they are world-class players, but just not good enough to have made it.
I'm curious to see how this affects players that fall into that Michael Rasmussen conundrum territory.
Yeah.
He played his 2 years in the WHL, got drafted to the Wings 9th overall, went back to the WHL that year and dummied the league that year. You could tell he was just physically dominant. So the Red Wings had to put him back in junior or the NHL. They saw what he did in junior that year. He wasn't going to learn anything else. Had to go into the Red Wings. He wasn't ready for that. Stunted his development. Are those players now going to get kicked to the NCAA as the kind of in between? Do the Red Wings maybe get a wink, wink, nudge, nudge deal with Michigan or Michigan State where we have these tweeners? You got an open roster spot. We got a guy for you. I'm fascinated to see if those start working it over the next few years.
How much better would Michael Rasmussen's development have gone if he could play in the NCAA?
I think it would have had a pretty significant impact. It's it was so long ago, it's hard to remember, but that first year for him in Detroit was tough because he couldn't go to the AHL either, like, which is the whole sticking point. Which, now that all this is in place, do they amend that rule so that they don't lose more players to a different league and they gain more control?
Another wrinkle in this, people are thinking the NCAA landscape has already changed with the whole NIL, name, image, likeness, money that's been flowing, especially in football. Obviously, that doesn't exist to anywhere near the same scale for hockey. Canadian players can't, international students, they can't go over there and, get the same money. They're on student visas. They're not allowed to earn that NIL money. And so that's something where people, if you thought that would have been a big advantage for the NCAA schools to recruit the best Canadian talent, not necessarily. So that's a legislative thing. That's not per NCAA policy either. So, I mean, in all, if you care about the best possible, most ready NHL talent, this is good for hockey. If you follow a CHL team, a USHL team, an NCAA team, things are going to look different. And, how's this going to affect the finances of OHL teams as well? I think about a lot where, like, these teams have heart and soul fans. They don't turn money over hand over fist. Is there going to be a model change where they start to pay players now? I don't know.
I think
it's going to take a decade to figure itself out, I think.
London really has been ahead of the curve.
Yeah. London's like the Alabama of the OHL.
They are.
I think what ultimately is going to happen is the NCAA is going to get a lot better, and so will the CHL, but I think the CHL is going to get younger. I think they're going to get a lot more of the top end 16, 17-year-olds, but they're probably going to lose more 19 and 20-year-olds than they would like.
And that will change the way the game looks, but that also could be better because then you have guys who can go out there and flourish talent-wise a bit better without, a grown-ass man drilling them into the ice or fear of that every single game. Because, like, there's a reason you don't see a lot of exception players who are, 15 years old or incredibly young players getting pushed up into those levels. It's because, like, you think about the differences in your body from when you were 15, 16 to when you were 19, 20.
I'm also curious to see what's going to happen with the quality of competition in the CHL, because that could go a couple ways. Because if you have a 18-year-old, 19-year-old prospect playing for Kitchener or London this year, they're loving life. They're crushing everybody. They're getting a ton of points, getting a lot of wins. You got one of those guys on Peterborough this year who's got one or no wins to this point. What's to stop them from mid-season going, I'm not dealing with this. Hey, Denver, I'm coming. And just take off. Like, there's so many things that need to be ironed out, whether they're not going to be allowed or not.
Was it fitting that the Peterborough Petes were at the Red Wings game last night? Or at least some? Anyways, we'll see how that one progresses. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Okay, let's jump into league news. The best 15-game start in NHL history, the Winnipeg Jets are 14-1. Who could have predicted this? Cheveldayoff wouldn't have predicted this.
Paul Maurice did.
Yeah, in his Stanley Cup speech. You have to think Florida ownership was like, okay, hold on. Because Florida's right behind them. 11-3-1, 5 points back, but they're the only other team that's, I think you look at them, you're like, oh, that's another cup-ready team. But still, 14-1 for the Jets. Holy.
Helps when you have the best goaltender on the planet.
Man. Weird year for the NHL. Evan, you said pregame when we were talking about the Rangers and like, oh, they're playing the Rangers 3 times. That sucks. You're like, the Rangers are in a wild card spot.
They're not even good.
They're 9-3-1, 19 points. That's a phenomenal start.
Washington's better than them.
Washington is 10-4 in 14 games. Yeah, the Rangers have a better points percentage, yes, but 10-4 in 14 games is still. Washington was supposed to be tanking.
Yeah, well, what do the Rangers not have? A 39-year-old on pace for like 70 goals.
He's gonna score his second ever 60-goal season on one of his twilight years of his career.
Isn't Dylan Strome still on pace for like 120 points?
When did that happen?
He's always been kind of good, just
of course. Remember who we clipped one of our old episodes of the podcast where we wanted to sign Dylan Strome because we thought he'd be a great solution for Detroit.
Again, we are right in our opinion.
Don't look at the other side of that column.
Exactly.
Carolina looks like a wagon. New Jersey, even if by some metrics they're not getting the goaltending they need, are 10-5-2. Just like the Metro is
powerhouse.
It's a weird year Minnesota. They're 10-2-2 to start the season. Bizarre.
And second in their division. Hey, Pacific sucks at least.
As they always do. They need to make it interesting so that when Edmonton wakes up, they have time to catch up kind of thing. Edmonton is back at 500, 7-7-1. Bizarre year. Dante Fabbro was waived and everyone went, oh. Dante Fabbro was claimed by the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, if you pay attention, were the last team prior to Detroit in the waiver order. So we won't know if Detroit put in a waiver claim, but a right shot D, 26 years old, has abilities, just hasn't worked out for him. Can it get worse in Detroit? Probably not. He had $2.5 million left on a one-year deal, so there's cap implications there. But could he have helped Detroit?
After watching Justin Hall and Jeff Petrie in person last night, he sure as hell couldn't have made it worse.
There was no way he was going to make it to Detroit. We knew that.
He got way closer than I would have thought.
Because by points percentage...
How did San Jose not claim him?
San Jose, Montreal, Chicago, Nashville, Anaheim, Philly, Seattle, Pittsburgh all passed on him.
Deeply unserious franchises.
He's not a world beater, but those are the teams that need some serious help right now.
1,000%. Again, reclamation project. What is he on waivers because he was lighting the world ablaze in Nashville? No, of course not.
Not that Nashville's lighting the world ablaze themselves.
Yeah, but there are enough signs, tools, and underlyings that make you think, but maybe.
Yeah.
And if you're a bad team with bad defense, but maybe is almost always worth it. You know who was a but maybe guy not that long ago? Dylan Strome.
Elsewhere, Daniel Sprong, who obviously former Red Wings, signed in Vancouver last offseason, late in the offseason, did not get the term or the money he was looking for, signed a minimum deal 1 year in Vancouver with the Canucks, already traded to another team, not a new team though, back to Seattle, where the Kraken fan did love him, to his credit, in exchange for future considerations, as Red Wings fans are very familiar with right now with the whole Wallman thing. And it would not have taken you long to hear people in the league say, even when Sprong signed his Vancouver deal, he's going to be on another new team before the end of the season. And they were right. Just doesn't work out for Sprong, whether you think about off ice, on ice, not being responsible for all the ability he has in depth scoring. And this is a tale as old as time in the NHL. But you're like, with all that ability, it's a damn shame that you can't keep it together enough where if you're scoring 20 a year in a depth role, that's an easy few $1,000,000.
You're a 15-year NHL veteran.
You'll be a journeyman, but you'll earn your money.
Oh, yeah.
He is the personification of the Red Wings power play and penalty kill.
One player. And their transition game. Yeah, it was different against the Rangers, but still. Wow, the Red Wings should get him back. He's just the ultimate Red Wing.
Put him on the penalty kill. Let's get weird.
No.
See what happens.
No, it would get worse. You know when people are like, oh, what's Talbot doing? What's Seider doing? This team isn't that good. It would be way worse without. Tell you that much for free. Okay, we are on fumes right now, so let's take some time here and jump into overtime before we wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, again, all the benefits I mentioned at the top of the show. And, we can't sell this officially branded, co-licensed Detroit Red Wings Winged Wheel podcast gear that we give away at Winged Wheel podcast nights, but we do keep back some extras for Patreon giveaways. So that's another way to be able to get, these jerseys, the hats, the beanies that we've given away, all that and lots more. You allow us to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation. You allow us to create other great content like Expected by Whom, hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. You allow us to have Max Bultman of The Athletic Detroit on the show as a contributor. The patrons are the reason we're able to do everything. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Let's take some questions from our patrons. Dan Bell says, hey guys, shout out to Michigan football, Michigan basketball, Arsenal, and the Red Wings for making my weekend absolute garbage. Is it just me, or is Casper clearly the number 2 center on this team? Seems like putting him with Raymond would help them both.
I'm in agreement with you on the general train of thought there. Obviously, the Cop resurgence has slowed down. I don't think Comfer's been bad this year, but he's been a far cry from what he was last year. That being said, I don't think Casper's going to go up to the second line and do more than Compher's doing right now. Yeah, there's some gains there, but there's also some losses. Best case scenario, it's a net wash. My train of thought, based on the way things have been going and the way guys have been playing, I want to see Kopp and Berggren swapped. Raymond needs someone who can move the puck with, and Berggren's been doing that very well. Kopp doesn't, to be polite about it. Compher can still be that, I don't know what you want to call it, glue guy between them, that kind of jack of all trades. His puck movement has struggled this year, but he's still useful, and he's not bad. But, man, whether it's Raymond or Kane there, whenever they're on that second line, it feels like they're on an island. So I think getting a little more offensive punch there, i.e. Berggren, would probably be my course of action right now.
My ultimate thought on this whole second, third line thing is that at the end of the day, it's a roster deficiency. So maybe there's a configuration that's going to work out better, but as of right now, there's no obvious answer. And even if you do find one, it might not hold. With that out of the way, I see what you're saying, Brad, but I also wonder, like Kasper, Tarasenko, Berggren, they're not converting, but the Red Wings by and large aren't either. And they look like one of the more dangerous lines on the ice. Like they're generating the chances, and maybe there's something to be said about you give him some time and maybe it'll start to come. I think Tarasenko's not been what the Red Wings have signed him to be so far, but maybe that production comes if you know, Kasper and his ability to play down the middle effectively between the two, like the opportunities are getting there.
So I had a thought last night during the game that was along the lines of what you're saying now. I would argue of the three players driving that third line right now, and I agree with you, they've been good. Tarasenko's probably the third. I have liked what I've seen more from Kasper and Berggren than I have seen from Tarasenko. But I would also argue with the lack of finish on that line, you know who generally does have better finish? Raymond or Kane, whoever's on the island on that second line. Maybe try Kasper and Berggren with one of those two. Yeah, that's going to be asking a lot of Kasper on the defensive end. But you look most nights, the second line is the problem line. So I'm willing to try anything. And you're right in the general sentiment of you can build one very good first line, one very good first pair, and then there's no other good configuration on this team. You're right. There's not enough there. But I would like to see a little more effort to try and unlock whatever one of the top four forwards gets saddled on the second line.
And it's a theme of a question. Like Dan Hedin says, hey, boys, after finally getting to watch Kasper in person, I think he should be moved up the lineup. Besides the first line, he was the only one down the lineup doing anything. And thank you to Mel for making sure everything went off without a hitch at Winged Wheel Podcast Night. Catherine as well was, it's great to be able to turn our brains off. But yeah, the whole Kasper moving up thing is being mentioned a lot here. Joseph Barry says, are we concerned about Raymond's ability to finish right now?
Man, he's still double clutching so much. How many last night alone did he look off?
You have to think that I don't think once one player starts scoring for the Red Wings, all of them will, but maybe there's a cascade effect where it just gets these players out of their heads. And Raymond's one of those guys who has that ability. It can't just be Larkin. Raymond can shoot. And if you're Derek Lalonde, like you talk to him and be like, hey, nothing is working right now. Just everything you have. What doesn't matter how good the look is. We're not winning the games anyways. Just shoot it. Just shoot it.
I always remember, I think it was actually Daniel Sprong in an interview was talking about his time with Washington. And he was talking about, you know, how much he loved Ovi as a leader. And he knew Sprong's got a good shot. And he would tell him before every game, don't think, just shoot, babe. And
yeah,
honestly, it might be the best advice anybody could give Lucas Raymond right now.
It's that bell curve meme where it's like the dumb guy, the sage guy, and the like nerd crying in the middle. Either end is just shoot. In the middle is like, no, you got to look for the perfect pass and the highest expected goal. Just shoot is the actual analysis here. Like when nothing, and that's a theme in sports. Like when nothing is going your way, get every thought out of your head and just go out there and be athletic.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, which is why I am garbage at golf.
Yes.
75 swing thoughts before the club's even behind my head. Oh, God. Now I'm sad. And again, same theme of a question. The Danny Man Can says, it makes sense we get shut out the first game we actually outplayed someone. It's what we deserve after racking up so many points playing poorly. Is it time to sound the alarm bells on Lucas? I know he's assisting, but we need goals and he's probably our third best shooter. Broadcast said he's shooting even less than last year and passed up multiple looks against the Rangers. The way we kept overpassing probably should have had well over 40 shots in that game. Even our checking line attempted a tic-tac-toe play. Disappointing weekend, but if we play like we did Saturday, we can't lose much more than we win the rest of the way. And that's the complicated, nuanced takeaway of it all. And even if Raymond is shooting less, that is, you have to change. If you're the coaching staff, you have to get him to change that. And you know what? You have to get his line mates to change that. Whoever he's playing with saying, you tell him to shoot. Make sure this guy shoots. Whatever you have to do just to break through the dam. Evans RBF says, I know as fans we're frustrated with this team, but how do you think Yzerman feels? Also, this team needs a spark. Should the team consider bringing up Kosa or Mazur just to bring some life back into them? Healthy Mazur, sure. Kosa, goaltending's not been the issue, so I don't really see the point of throwing a rookie goaltender in behind this defense. What does Yzerman feel? How many more shots do we need of him grinding his teeth into dust in the owner's box? Can't be happy.
No.
And it's not just about results. It's about the effort, right? It's not pretty hockey. Beargrin's map reading tutor says, as a sci-fi nerd, I'm honored the Red Wings have gone beyond the standard Star Wars night and have apparently hired a stormtrooper to coach shot accuracy in high danger areas. No question there, but I just thought that
is hilarious.
Denny's Gamer Girl said, I had a lot of fun at the podcast last night. Can't wait to go to another one. Thank you so very much for coming out. Last night was the final time I want to see a line with Kopp and Comfort together. While not awful players, together they make a line devoid of talent for whoever is the other winger. And that's what we were talking about before. It worked for a bit, and now it's fallen off. But I just wonder, again, is there a permanent solution with any configuration of these players? I lean towards no.
It could be just... Honestly, I'm not above... Okay, I'm at the point, Raymond, DeBrincat, Larkin, don't break them up. It's the best line this team can put together, and we see it time and time again. Sorry, Patty Kane, you're the odd man out, but just go with the run hot. Just slap shit together. If it works for a couple games, run it till it doesn't, and then try again.
When you're a mushy middle team, that's what you can do. Because if it worked out better for you and you had easier options, you wouldn't be a mushy middle team.
You throw Tyler Mott up on the second line for a game, and he pops off for a goal or two. Okay, cool. Run it till he stops scoring.
Won't be long, but run it.
Yeah. Beargrin, you had a good game. Cool. Congrats, buddy. You've been promoted. Oh, you did bad that game. Sorry. Marco, your turn.
Taylor F says, hey, boys, at this point, would it really hurt to work in a Tuomisto, Buyam, or maybe Willander into the lineup? I don't think it could be worse. Brad's age-old saying. The default answer is those guys are they showing enough to say they should be in an NHL lineup? But then at this point, you look at the NHL lineup players and you're like, well, Brad's age-old saying.
I'd rather teams play young players who might be bad versus old players who are bad. And Buyam, you're probably not throwing him in there. One, he shoots left, which isn't the big issue for the Red Wings. And he's the most raw. He's in his first AHL season. Tuomisto's older than I think anybody would like to admit. So if you're going to just throw somebody to the Wolves to, hey, maybe it's probably him. And the fact that he shoots right, big plus.
Okay, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Folks, thank you all so much for coming out to last night's event. You sold it out again. We would love to open up even more tickets, but as you could see, the spillover into the outdoor area in the beer garden, we're going to need a bigger boat. We are blown away and humbled every time. To Ken Daniels and to Sam Rosen, amazing show. Thank you both so much. Sam was so gracious with his time, had a blast. Very surreal to meet Sam Rosen in person and say, hey, come on our live podcast. And he was just you're saying, Evan, put a quarter in him.
Yeah, the stories were fantastic.
Oh, man. Outside of the Red Wings world, the Rangers 94 run is truly one of the greatest playoffs in hockey history. And to just hear the story from that, man, it was awesome. I absolutely loved it.
Patreon supporters, we're going to publish that show for you hopefully soon here as a bonus episode for patrons. And for those of you who want to hear it more broadly, we will release it later on, but as a bonus for patrons, you'll have first access to it. So that'll be up for you. We can't thank you all enough. And to all of you who became patrons after, thank you for joining the Dub Dub Club and supporting the show and allow us to do more. There is Winged Wheel Podcast Night with the Grand Rapids Griffins on January 18th. Get your tickets, griffinshockey.com/WWP. There will be another Winged Wheel podcast night at the LCA this season. Stay tuned for the date and the announcement. You're going to like that giveaway as well, I promise you. To all of our Patreon supporters, we could not do this without you. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to join the Dub Club. And if you want to support the show, but Patreon's not for you, leave a rating and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, leave the rating review. It does help. Tell a friend about the show. By the way, Spotify's been having a lot of issues recently. So if you're on Spotify and we sound, like chipmunks or the show just cuts off, delete the episode, re-download it. It's a Spotify thing. It's driving us nuts as well. Sorry about that. Additionally, to all of our new listeners, welcome to the show, and listeners of old. You've seen that it can get better, so hang in there, but appreciate everyone tuning in. And to all of our sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast, thank you. And our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Schenker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Garon Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Whitehead, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zoiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Carl Brutanen-Analuski, Beer League Legend is a brand new name level supporter, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nays, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Seider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Gin and Juice, or Gin and Juicy, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Griffin, God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Marcus, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlin, Mr. Kuzi, Pickleball Sucks, Just Played Tennis Dork, R.A., great to meet you last night, Riley Enright, Roy Donk, brand new name level supporter, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor, Stephen Ordeleb, that's what I appreciate about you, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Eiserplan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, welcome Aaron Hudson, Sam Bankson, AA Ron, AB, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Axel Sandy Pelika, Bellingham Masterballs, Bex, Chimkim Nuggets, Commander Ben Baron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsyuk's Dangleberries, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Golf Sucks, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, new name level supporter, I believe, Keenan O'Donohue, Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Lucas Raymond, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much for bearing with us. We'll be back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.